Well, the prosecution in the Dean Skelos corruption trial has rested, and the jury could get the case, get this, as early as tomorrow. Well, Dominic Carter, he is live in Lower Manhattan covering the trial, wire to wire, and some developments today. Isn't that right, Dom?
Indeed, that's the case, Richard. High drama, if you will, inside the courtroom. Just a little while ago, Dean Skelos, the former Senate Majority Leader, himself in the courtroom, Richard, walked up to U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara and actually shook his hand. Now, it is the U.S. Attorney that is seeking to put Mr. Skelos in jail for a very long time. We asked Mr. Skelos, I did right out here a short time ago, why did he shake the U.S. Attorney's hand? His answer, Richard, he's a gentleman. All right, tell us how you feel, Senator.
I feel we're going to be exonerated, found innocent, and tomorrow you're going to hear our side of the case.
As expected, Dean Skelos decided to not take the witness stand on his own behalf. Political observers say it does not look good for Skelos or his son, Adam.
It looks to me as if this is not going to be as difficult for the jury as the Sheldon Silver case was, because this doesn't involve such nuanced interpretations of law, and there are the tapes. There were no tapes of Sheldon Silver saying anything.
It is the wiretaps like this one with Adam Skelos.
I can take that and I can actually give that to Ed Mangano. Now, secretly, Ed Mangano's been pushing for P3s with Cuomo, and apparently he's been doing it pretty heavily.
That has been damaging and even entangled Nassau County into an investigation. How the company that employed Adam Skelos won a $12 million contract, and that company, Abtec, was not the lowest bidder. Later in the same wiretap, Adam Skelos continued.
Once that happens, then everything else falls into place, and definitely Nassau County, since Ed's the one pushing all this.
At the end of the day, the Nassau County executive Ed Mangano did not testify, but what is raising red flags, the feds refused to grant him an immunity deal. In closing arguments regarding Dean and Adam Skelos, prosecutors said, quote, beginning in 2010, two men began a multi-year scheme to corrupt one of the most powerful offices in the state. But there was more. Quote, you can't commit a crime and say I'm not guilty because I did it for my son.
For people who've watched movies about corruption and crime and so on, this seems like a scene from a movie. It's so vivid, and I think that is going to make it very hard for the jury to reject the prosecution argument.
Why not take the stand, Adam?
I can't comment about the case till it's over, but I'm happy to answer any of your questions when we are found innocent.
Richard, court continues tomorrow morning, but things are moving pretty rapidly here at the federal courthouse. Richard, let's go back to you in the studio.
Hey, Dom, just a procedural question. There's people who feel some sympathy for the father here. After all, he wasn't doing this to line his pockets. He was trying to help his kid out. Very little, if any, sympathy for the son. That all said, because they were represented jointly, is there a way, just legally, that when the jury comes back, they could find, let's say, they could acquit the father of certain other charges while finding the son guilty? How does that work?
Well, excellent question. They are charged for the same crimes separately. So conceivably, Richard, your assessment is correct that they, for example, they might find Skelos not guilty on one count, but Dean Skelos, but might find Adam Skelos guilty of the same count. The charges are conspiracy, extortion, and bribery. But here's the problem, Richard. The son, let's say for argument's sake, we buy into your argument, and they each have their own lawyers, by the way. But let's buy into the argument that you're making. The fact of the matter is, Adam Skelos could not have done any of this if he is found guilty without his powerful father. So if there's anyone that's going to be found guilty at the end of the day, and we're only speculating right now because the jury has not spoken, but if anyone's going to be found guilty, it's Dean Skelos. But it's not looking good for either one of them, Richard.
And that, my friend, is an understatement. Dominic, as always, thank you very much. All right, let me bring in the panel right now. It doesn't look good at all here for the Skelos folks, but if there's a period at the end of this for Albany, I'm not sure with what we talked about this week, there's any appetite from the governor to do anything in a significant way as it relates to reform. Certainly the legislature is not going to be banging down the door to get anything done right now. I'm not so sure that the most shocking part of this won't be the conviction of 2 of the 3 men in the room, but that Albany isn't going to radically change.
The lawmakers aren't going to vote to take away some of their own protection in all of this? Yeah, no, I'm not terribly surprised about that. I think the answer that you're going to hear is that these were just 2 bad guys who did bad things, Skelos and Silver, and you don't need bigger systemic changes. I don't think we're going to see any for quite some time. I mean, the next hope might be the Constitutional Convention, which we will start talking about more of in the coming months as that heads towards the ballot in November.
I only got a minute left here. I thought there's a political window for the governor. Forget about for what reasons here, just purely political. He can get any reform he wants. The lawmaker who's not going to vote to change Albany after these 2 guys will, in all likelihood, see some time. He's given every indication he's not doing it.
Until he announces that he's going to do something. We don't know. But understand, and we saw this when Zephyr Teachout primaried him for the Democratic nomination.
Last week on the same subject, yep.
Anything he comes out with is not going to be something, let's say, she would have supported. So it's going to be blasted in the editorial pages. It's going to be blasted by reporters as being weak tea. So why do it? I mean, why do it if you're going to be criticized, and then maybe you don't even get to pass this? And these 2 actions, and I really would distinguish between Silver and Skelos. I think Silver is what it is, and I think the Skelos situation is a tragedy. You know, they're going to, right, to Andrew's point, these were bad actors. It has nothing to do with the laws.
Well, I just think had Silver gotten off and they had made the case that he, you know, I mean, the fact that you convict them both if that happens leads to this point that Andrew made. These are bad apples. The law is fine. These are bad apples, and that's simply not true.
I got to pivot here, but guys, thank you all so much. Now, when we come back here, a really interesting story, and one many of you may remember. An elite prep school in the Bronx, allegations of sexual abuse and cover-up, the Horace Mann scandal, the subject of a new book, getting a lot of buzz. The author joins me after this.